Before I get into Fighting is About Fighting and share with you some of the interesting things that we've heard, learned, seen here in Calgary, I want to tell you a little story about my friend Chael Sonnen. So Chael Sonnen is one of the great minds. Everybody's different, all of us. Chael understands human behavior. He understands this idea. We hear this idea all the time, getting in someone's head. You don't know what it is until Chael Sonnen gets in your head. And you're like, oh, I get it. What does that actually mean when we say that? Oh, is Dom in his head? Is Connor in his head? Who's in his head? It means you're actually thinking. Somebody has you in a little loop where you're like, what's going on here? Why did they do that? Why did they say that? What's happening? So I'll tell you a little story. This is chilling for me. Now, I hope you may find this interesting. But from my personal perspective, this was some chilling shit. All right? So quick background. Chael Sonnen is a friend, good friend, mentor, and he's been very generous with me. Somebody who's been very kind to me. And we've shared some conversations and some things. I think I remember sending ice cream to his home for something that he did, some advice he gave me once. I genuinely appreciate Chael Sonnen. And recently, he's been helping me with a few other things. I'll be able to tell you about those in the future, maybe, or maybe not. But yes, I very much appreciate Chael. So the other morning, my wife and I'm in bed. My wife and I are having coffee in bed, and I'm watching something on my phone. And it's Chael Sonnen says Bruce Lee sucks, right? I'm like, oh, this is going to be good, right? So I'm watching it. He's like, that guy was a wimp. And then he takes a few stabs at Judo Jean LaBelle while he's in there, who I'm pretty sure he's friends with. So I'm watching this, and my wife, who, has never met Chael in person, but knows that he has been a big influence on me and a very helpful mentor. She's like laughing. She's like, oh man, he's really going for it. And I'm laughing too, because part of me, now, first of all, don't fuck with Bruce Lee. That's my guy right there. And to debate this or discuss this with Chael would actually be fun, because the influence of Bruce Lee is in his philosophies, the way that he sees the world, the way he interacted with interacted with the world, the way that he drew comparisons to life from art and martial arts and the artistry of living. But Chael was not incorrect when he pointed to the fact that he was small and he didn't fight much and stuff. So Chael's is rarely going to be wrong. But anyway, so I'm laughing at this because there's, I know that part of to be a great entertainer, and Chael is a great entertainer, and to be a great influencer. And Chael is the definition of the modern influencer. He influences thought. He influences debate. He influences action. When people say, oh, he's got a phone, he's an influencer. Chael Sonnen is the definition of an influencer. Anyway, so he's influenced me to respond to this laugh at it. So I'm in that mode. So I carefully craft a tweet. Something like, Chael Sonnen is my friend, but don't fuck with Bruce Lee. Don't make me. And then I'm like, I have to put a stab at him. Cody Covington's his friend, and he likes he's always had sizzle, the Brazilian kids are playing in the muck. He's got a sense of humor about this. I'm like, I got to make him laugh here. So I take a stab at his town, Westland, Oregon, because that's a good old professional wrestling thing to do. It's like, this place is a shithole. And then I said, don't make me come over there and slap you. I'm looking at him and laugh, send. So that would have been the end of that. And, a couple hundred people retweeted, like 97% of which have insight into the fact that that's not actually how I normally behave. Clearly, I'm having a gag here. And it's funny. And I get to defend Bruce Lee, my hero. So this is the chilling part. Maybe 2 hours later, Chael Sonnen texts me. And this is where the genius is. It is in the selection of the medium. Because if he just wrote this in a tweet back, we would be like, oh, this is happening in public, therefore it's funny, therefore it's gamesmanship, therefore this is part of the verbal sparring between people who play in arenas of this nature. But he just texted it to me. A little bit of pleasantries directed towards my life and my wife. We have a little new home, something about that. A little hello to Erica. And then simply the address of the hotel that he is at in New York and an invitation to come down and slap him. And I'm looking at this. Now, there's a number of things at play here. At first, I'm like, oh, haha, Chael's funny. And then I'm like, well, fuck. This is what it is when someone's in your head. I'm like, okay, well. First of all, did I offend him? My first thought is, am I in any physical danger? And my quick answer to that is no. Chael's a businessman, and he doesn't fight to not get paid, and he doesn't get arrested for stupid things. So I'm not in any physical danger. The second would be, so that's good. The next is, oh, he's just kidding around. But this is what it is to have someone in your head, because you could easily go, well, of course he was kidding around, or no, he wasn't. You don't know, and I don't know. And that's how he wanted it. That's how he wanted it. He wanted to ride in your head, to take up that real estate. Then I had to really give it some thought. It's like, well, did he know I was kidding? Yes. Okay, he did know. So for sure, he knows I'm kidding. He knows me. He knows this is not my arena. He knows I'm joking. So that's good. So what else could be going on here? And then I realize I'm a subordinate in our relationship and in where we are in our what we do. I am a subordinate. He is a mentor. I am a mentoree. I'm a learner. I'm developing with his assistance. He's gone out of his way to help me with things. Maybe in this level of our relationship, also knowing that I'm a white belt in this sort of thing, and he is a fucking black belt of black belts, maybe I'm actually out of line. Maybe, and I don't know the rules. That's the thing. And to some degree, the rules are made up. You don't know the rules when you're dealing with Conor McGregor because he made them up, right? So I'm like, maybe I'm not allowed to go after his town. He loves that fucking town. Or maybe subordinates don't publicly say they're going to go slap you. But whatever the fuck it is, Chael, by sending that text, polite pleasantries towards myself and my wife, and then his address, which I will not read to you because in case he stays at that hotel, he doesn't want you coming to his hotel. The address to the hotel and an invitation to go and attempt, if I chose, to slap his face. I don't know what your game was, sir, but much respect. If I was out of line, sincerest of apologies. And if you're fucking with me, congratulations. You, sir, are the best at it. So I just wanted to share that story with you guys. Other than that, we are here in Calgary. It has been a beautiful and fun thing. Couple quick things to give you an insight into what this is like these days. You know, if you are just watching this segment, you maybe didn't see I told a story about, or listening to the segment, told the story about Chael Sonnen, the ultimate influencer. The game of doing a job like this today is they call it an influencer job. That's what they call it. And you must have your employers, and you must give them fucking 100% of your effort. So I am employed by TSN, and we came in to do that. I also, in my free time, I have my own show down the street we're putting on. We're doing YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, what's it? SoundCloud. Sorry, SoundCloud. Like that's a person. I've offended SoundCloud. Mark is editing stuff. We're shooting things. We're doing 1-minute breakdowns. This is the job now. But it's challenging, man. It's challenging. We were up at 5-ish. We were at the airport at 7. We flew from 8:30, 4 hours. We gained a few hours. We were going to go directly into the TSN gig. So I was picked up by a guy named Chad Ferguson, who, and for those of you who do podcasts or any of these types of things, you want to see how to get it done? Chad Ferguson, I Want to Know, is that the name of his podcast? I Want to Know. Go check it out. I was on it. He didn't say, hey, could you come on my podcast in Airdrie, 40 minutes outside of Calgary? He said, can I pick you up at the airport, help you through whatever you're doing that day, and then if you have time, do a podcast and then take you where you need to go. If any of you have podcasts or things like that, that's how it's done. That is how it's done. Also, Chad's a very cool guy. So Chad picks us up at the airport, knowing first we were going to go to his thing, but now with my employer becoming busier and busier, and they're the number one priority when there's somebody who hires you for your skills and effort. I'm going to the media day. I will walk in there and be working immediately. I'm in the back of his cab truck getting a suit on, and undershirt and a shirt and jacket. Mark's holding that stuff. It's in a suit bag with 4 other suits. It's nearly impossible. You get that done, put a little makeup, walked straight in, interviewed Alvarez Poirier, Joanna, I think Olivier Aubin Mercier, Jeremy Stevens, etc. Then shot a couple of pieces for SportsCenter, including a double-ender. Then we got in his truck. Then we went straight to his place where we did a podcast. I want to know. They're doing a great job. A young podcast. Try to follow them if you can. Then he drove us to the UFC gym where I shot an analysis piece that we had been previously working on The Viz with the people back in Toronto. Shot with 2 great shooters here. They sent that back to then send. Then we came back here, cleaned up. Then we got to do some stuff related to the show. And then we went and got together with Bisping and Dominic Cruz, which, if you're listening to this as the full podcast or watching it as the long form, we will be throwing to shortly. That was just yesterday. It was 17 or 18 hours by the time we were done. Did 2 one-minute breakdowns, one with Dom, one with Mike. They're on the Instagram. This is the job now. This is the job. The job once was, and actually it was Chael who told me this, when he was working for Fox. He would get picked up at West Linn, Oregon, and he said he would literally just have like his phone in his pocket. He didn't even need money. You would get picked up because he was at the top of the game working for, say, UFC Tonight. Get picked up at his place in West Linn, Oregon in a limousine and driven to the airport. You'd get off the thing and a guy would more or less take you by the hand to the other limousine to take you into makeup where people had suits pressed for you. Then they would ask you what you wanted to eat, which was anything you would choose. They'd get that for you. They'd put you in. They'd put you in front of a thing. You'd shoot, and then they'd send you home. It's not like that no more. This is and I'm not complaining. We love this. It's a challenging grind, but that's part of the adventure of it. That was just yesterday. And then tonight we're doing the show. I don't know how long we're going, Mark, because I know I'm meandering all over. The Mike and Cruz we're going to be throwing to in just a bit. I want to give you, I'm not complaining, and if I sound like I am, please forgive me and correct me. Don't be afraid to correct me. Tell me I sound like I'm being a whiner, because there's nothing to whine about. This is a thrill. But this morning was the official weigh-ins, and whenever you're watching or listening to this, the Calgary fights have already happened, right? And, hey, you might be listening to this on the Saturday afternoon of the Calgary fights, but a lot of people will listen after. So I want to give you some insights that I gathered from some coaches. So I don't give away anyone's game plan if they don't, do it live on camera or directly to a camera. And the reason I also don't give away any analysis on fighters to other camps ever. I was offered good money to break down one of the greatest fighters of all time, 4 or 5, just recently. And I really wanted to do it just for the incredible challenge of being a part of it. But I realized, and it was for us, Zahabi who told me this, gave me this advice, and he's correct. I am one of the greatest gifts I have in my life, not just job, but my life, is I get invited into all these gyms with all these geniuses, Duke and Mark Henry and Faraz, and all of them, they're so kind to me, and they see me as I'm generally quite positive, and I celebrate these athletes, and so they invite me to their gyms. If I start analyzing fighters and giving them to other teams, that will stop. So I can't do that. So I had to turn that job down, and it would have been pretty cool to do, but I know it's not the right thing to do. So I would never give away something, and they do tell me sometimes, and sometimes I go, that's off the record, and other times I take the genuine compliment of knowing that they know that they know that about me from getting to know me over the years. So I won't give those things away, but after the fight, these are things that they will be mentioning and they will be giving away, and I'm not giving you anything so in detail like, he throws his right hook on a wide angle knowing the head slips over here, which Mark coincidentally told me about Frankie, his head position. I did a breakdown on Frankie knocking out overhand right. Chad Mendes, who looked fucking good the other day, eh? Holy shit, Chad Mendes, wow. Yeah. So when Frankie landed the right hand left hook on Chad Mendes, Mark saw the thing, and he started texting me, and he was like, bro, he was very complimentary. And I remember describing something that Frankie did was smooth like a model in an evening dress or something. And Mark was like, I just love your stuff. He's like, I know some people think the words you use are crazy. He goes, but for people like us, we love it. And that's a big compliment. But he told me, and specifically then, that angle that I detected of where Frankie's head was, not just that was right, which is nice, but how hard it is to develop. How hard you have to specifically see something that you might be able to use or that you believe may work. Then you have to train it for weeks or months or years to develop the ability to do it. You can't just tell a fighter, I want you to put your head on this different line when you throw a punch against fucking Demetrius Johnson. Well, great. Okay, coach. And then the way you've done it for the last 10 years, as soon as you get hit a few times and get a little tired, that's how you'll do it. You have to retrain. You have to form the neurological pathways in your brain to do it. So that stuff is cool. So anyways, the few things that they mentioned to me will be relevant after the fight because we'll be able to look back and go, oh, was that so? And I'm finding this idea a hell of a lot more interesting than the idea of who you got. And no offense to anyone who likes that or likes to gamble or anything, or people are like, who you got in this one. I'd like to see people write down some things that could happen and then open it later. You don't have to tell me now what you think. And also, I know that there's no way to really predict these things. But if you made a little envelope and stuck it in there, and then after it's like, by the way, bitches, I said that DC would land a head kick or John Jones would land a head kick on Cormier. You'd be like, well, what? I remember one, I had texted Sean Shelby because I was working with a guy named Nick Denis, and we were Sean signed him, and we were booking fights, and I said, Cub is going to knock out Ross Pearson with a left hook in the second round. That was back when I believed you could predict those things. And you make enough of them, one is going to be right. And that one was right. And Sean was like, holy shit. It's like, that is very impressive. But you don't talk about the other 83 times. You're like, oh, yeah, I think it's going to be a head kick. Jeremy Stevens' flying knee on Jose Aldo, or I think that one's going to end due to eye poke. You know what I mean? It's like predicting a punch is about as logical as predicting a groin shot. Like, it's just as barely predictable, right? But so anyways, when we look at this one, Mark Henry gave me some interesting insight and stuff he said before, and he would be careful. And this isn't something I can't repeat. I'm sure of it, so which is why I'm telling you. But he's like, if we got full MMA, Eddie, we're gonna win this fight. If we got wing and punches just going in there to fucking experience it and let it fly, Eddie, we might win this fight. And sometimes that's a really interesting and simple way to look at it. It's like, well, what's the game plan, coach? Well, this game, you're a fucking high-level professional fighter. Any of these may work. But this one's going to work most likely. You know what I mean? And in Eddie's case, the way that he beat Gilbert Melendez, and please do me a favor, don't forget how fucking good Gilbert Melendez is. Easy to do when we forget time passes, but that is a great fighter. And then Anthony Pettis. The way he beat those two guys can beat a lot of guys like that. And that doesn't mean you don't pepper in big shots and you don't take them down and elbow them, but you can squeeze these guys, wear them down, make them less dangerous. And you got 25 minutes to do it. So from what I'm picking up, that's what they'd like Eddie to do. That's how they'd like Eddie to fight. The interesting thing for me when we look at this after the fight is, did he do it? And if he did, were they right and it worked and it was the key to it? The first one, if the answer is no, he didn't do it, this whole conversation becomes irrelevant. But if the answer is, yeah, he put him against the fence and he wore him down and it was the difference. He won rounds 4 and 5 and won the fight. Or he was wearing him down and it was working, but Dustin reversed him, hurt him, was on top of him or submitted him or something. So this, to me, knowing the intention is really interesting to me. What is the coach's intention for Eddie Alvarez? Doesn't mean Eddie gives a shit. In fact, Eddie loves his coaches, teammates. Like, those guys are quite tight. that group, and I know you could say this about any of them, but they have like, there's a religious connection between most of these men, you know what I mean, and women, and family connection. That's something you can hear a lot, but I see it in a different way with these guys. So he loves them, and he would like to give them what they want, but sometimes he just goes in and trusts his process, and his process involves suffering. He told me that too. He's told me that. He said, I know if I'm suffering in a fight that I'm ultimately going to be winning. And if I'm suffering, I need to treat the process. And I was like, that's fucked up, but amazing, right? That's the kind of shit. That's the kind of shit that really excites me about our job, being here, is, you know, face to face, looking the best in the world in the eye, who we share conversation, and somebody like Eddie has respect for what I bring to the table and how I look at things, and he'll share an idea like that with me, that if he's in a fight and he's suffering and he's experiencing suffering, that means you probably are too. And so then he needs to trust the process, because that means if we're both suffering, I can suffer longer and harder and better and come out the other side and beat you. Right? That's awesome. So super jazzed for that fight. And I don't want to find myself in a place where, because it's just not my nature, where I'm only looking at it from one side. I'm a huge Dustin Poirier fan. Huge. Massive. Like I have been for a long time. I remember in Quebec going up and only talking to him after a show in Quebec because I was desperately curious about what he was doing and why he was doing it. And I've been following him very closely ever since. But Eddie is one of my very favorite. And so I'm human, you know. What else did we learn? A couple other quick things. Spend a little bit of time with Duke Rufus today, and man, that guy loves martial arts. Man, does he love martial arts, you know, and the history of it, and his connection to it through long pants kickboxing, and then through Muay Thai, and then through his love of you know, the boxing concepts of Cuba, and pulling in, he's a purple belt, and pulling in all the different martial arts. And you can see how much he loves working with John McDessie. And I bring it up because very easy if somebody said, hey, who's one of the most special fighters that you know that most people don't quite understand or connect to or realize how? And the answer would be John McDessie for me. Very, very, very special and different martial artist. And Duke encourages him. Once upon a time, they said, you know, you can't cross your feet when you do an armbar. And they said a front kick will never work in fighting. And Anderson Silva and Leo Machida. And then they said a spinning hook kick will never work in fighting. People said once head kicks didn't work. Bas Rutten, one of the greatest of all time, and, you know, greatest of his era, and greatest coaches that directed and grew into what Dwayne Ludwig does, and a massively influential, awesome, wonderful human being. He once said, don't jab in fighting. Because that's where it was at the time. Well, there's a lot of things they say now, that won't work, you shouldn't do that. Well, John does those things. And Duke encourages him to do those things. And that's where the gold is. All the things they say that are wrong or incorrect, that's where the gold is. And that's true in martial arts, and that's true in life.